Hello and welcome. Today, we're re-embarking on an epic journey back in time to explore the dawn of one of the world's oldest and most influential civilizations, ancient China. The history of China begins more than 4,000 years ago, along the banks of great rivers, where some of humanity's most enduring civilizations emerged. It's a story of powerful dynasties, profound philosophies, and groundbreaking innovations that shaped a nation and left an indelible mark on the world. From the mythical tales of its earliest rulers to the grand unification under its first emperor, this is the story of how China began. So, let's travel back to the fertile plains and winding rivers where it all started. China's geography is the stage upon which this grand history unfolds. Two mighty rivers, the Yellow River, or Huanghe, in the north, and the Yangtze River in the south, were the lifeblood of ancient Chinese civilization. The Yellow River, often called the cradle of Chinese civilization, flows through a vast plain of fine, wind-blown silt called Lo. This soil is incredibly fertile, but the river was also notoriously unpredictable, prone to devastating floods, earning it the nickname China's Sorrow. For centuries, there was no concrete proof that Xia ever existed. However, archaeological discoveries in the 20th century began to change that. At a site called Litu in Hunan province, archaeologists unearthed a large palace complex, bronze workshops, and artifacts that seemed to align with the period and location described in ancient texts about the Xia. Bronze Age state society in this region during that time. The Xia dynasty, whether historical fact or foundational myth, represents the crucial transition from prehistoric cultures to the organized dynastic rule that would define China for millennia. Emerging from the mists of legend into the clear light of history, we arrive at the Shang dynasty, which ruled from roughly 1600 to 1046 BC. With the Shang, we have solid archaeological and written evidence. This was a powerful Bronze Age civilization, centered in the Yellow River Valley, with a sophisticated social structure headed by a king who served as both a political and religious leader. The Shang are perhaps most famous for two incredible innovations. The first is their mastery of bronze casting. Around 1046 BCE, the Shang dynasty was overthrown by a new power from the west. The Zhou dynasty would become the longest-reigning dynasty in Chinese history, lasting for nearly 800 years. But how did they justify overthrowing the established Shang rulers? They introduced one of the most enduring political and philosophical concepts in Chinese history: the mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven was the idea that heaven, a divine and impersonal cosmic force, granted a ruler the right to mandate to rule. This right, however, was not permanent. A ruler and their dynasty had to govern justly, maintain social order, and perform the proper rituals. If a ruler became corrupt, tyrannical, and if natural disasters like floods or famines occurred, these were seen as signs that the ruler had lost the mandate of heaven. When that happened, heaven would withdraw its support, making it not only possible but righteous for a new leader to rise up and overthrow the old dynasty. The successful rebellion of the Zhou was therefore framed not as a simple conquest, but as the execution of heaven's will. The Shang had become decadent, so the virtuous Zhou were given the mandate to rule instead. This powerful idea of a ruler's moral responsibility became a cornerstone of Chinese political thought, shaping the rise and fall of dynasties for the next 3,000 years. The later centuries of the Zhou dynasty were a time of great turmoil and conflict, known as the Spring and Autumn and the Warring States periods. The central Zhou authority weakened, and powerful feudal lords fought endlessly for control. But out of this chaos came an unprecedented flourishing of intellectual thought, often called the 100 Schools of Thought. It was during this era that the three most influential philosophies of China were born. First came Confucius, a wandering teacher whose ideas would become the bedrock of Chinese society. Confucius was deeply concerned with restoring social order and harmony. He believed this could be achieved not through force, but through moral cultivation. He emphasized concepts like Ren, or Humanas Li, or proper ritual and etiquette, and filial piety, the respect for one's parents and elders. For Confucius, a well-ordered state began with a well-ordered family, and a good ruler should lead by moral example, not by punishment. At around the same time, another voice emerged with a very different message. Lao Tse, the legendary author of the Daya De Jing and the founder of Taoism encouraged a retreat from the complexities of society and a return to a simpler, more natural way of life. Then, from the western state of Qin, a leader emerged who would change the course of Chinese history forever. His name was Ying Zheng. Adopting the principles of legalism, the state of Qin had built a formidable, highly disciplined military machine and a ruthlessly efficient bureaucracy. One by one, from 230 to 221 BCE, the Qin conquered the remaining rival states. With all of China under his control, Ying Zheng declared himself Qin Shi Huang, which means the first emperor of Qin. He didn't just conquer China, he unified it. He abolished the old feudal system and divided the empire into administrative districts governed by officials he appointed directly. He standardized everything: the writing system, currency, weights and measures, and even the axle widths of carts to create the uniform road system. He connected existing fortifications to create the first version of the Great Wall. His rule was autocratic and often brutal, but his actions forged a unified cultural and political entity that we now know as China. The rise of Qin Shi Huang marks the end of ancient China and the beginning of imperial China. From the legendary floods tamed by Yu the Great to the unifying conquests of Qin Shi Huang, ancient China was a crucible of civilization. The development of agriculture on the banks of the Yellow and Yangtze rivers gave rise to powerful dynasties like the Shang and Zhou. These eras gave us foundational innovations like a writing system that is still in use today and political ideas like the mandate of heaven. And in a time of chaos, thinkers like Confucius, Laozi, and the legalists forged philosophies that would shape the soul of a nation. These ideas and institutions, born thousands of years ago, formed the enduring foundation of Chinese civilization, creating a rich and complex legacy that continues to influence not just China, but the entire world to this day. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from history. See you next time.